Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about signature levels and signature abilities, and more specifically about champions that I personally call SIG 200 champions. Now, I do believe that there are 4 groups of champions in this game when it comes to their relevance of their signature ability. Now, group number 1 is quite simple: champions that do not need to be awakened. I already have made videos specifically about them. And basically, those are champions that do not lose much, if anything, if they're not awakened, and they still maintain vast majority of their functionality. And yeah, it's not really essential outside of prestige, perhaps in some cases, to have those champions awakened. Talking about Black Widow Clairvoyant here, and a whole plethora of other champions. Now, the second group of champions is also very important, because those are champions who just need their signature ability unlocked, and then you gain very little from adding signature stones to it. Now, that is due to several reasons. One of those reasons typically is the fact that the signature ability itself has several abilities in it, and the main one that you care about is not scaling with the signature level, like Corvus Glaive. You do want to get that immortality because it is very important, but the fact that you occasionally will be able to regain his charges quicker is borderline irrelevant. And then again, we have Nick Fury, who, again, you just want to have access to real Nick Fury, and how quickly you degen back 30% is not really all that important. So those are in the second group. Champions can kind of fit in 2 groups in a case of Archangel, for instance, because Archangel, ideally you just want to have him awaken and he is good to go, but when you reach a certain signature level, you do gain more from that signature ability, and you can shut down opponent with 3 neurotoxins instead of 4. So he technically fits into a champion category that does need high SIG if you want to get the most of him, but he's also perfectly happy and good at SIG 1 and SIG 20. And in third group, we have most of the champions in game. That's Mojo, who gains potency on his Fury with higher SIG, so he does more damage. It's Void, who applies his debuff quicker and hits harder. It's, again, vast majority of the champions fit in third category. However, it doesn't make much of a difference whether it's SIG 160, SIG 180, or SIG 200 with those champions. Yeah, they get slightly better, but that's just about it. Getting slightly better would technically fit any champion in the game. Except if it wouldn't be for the SIG 200 category. And SIG 200 category are champions that unlock 100% reliability to their abilities. So we are going to be looking for champions who have their signature abilities scale up to 100%, and that will enable you to be able to rely on those abilities to trigger. You can always toss a coin and with lower SIG levels and hope they trigger, but they could potentially be devastating consequences. If you want that ease of mind, that peace into your mind when you're fighting, you want SIG 200 on these champions. So keep in mind that that is my definition. If you have different definition, if you disagree with my picks, that is perfectly fine. But at the very least, acknowledge that the video's picks will be going according to my definition. And do not jump in comment section starting to immediately, why isn't this in there? I'm triggered. This champion definitely needs SIG 200. No, we're not doing that. These are the champions that I define as SIG 200 champions. If you have a valid reason to why I should include some other champions, and if they fit in the current definition, I'll gladly do so. Or if you can come up with a better definition for champions that are SIG 200, well, reliant SIG 200. Anyways, let's go quickly over the objectives. So the first one I just did. I explained what is a SIG 200 champion. Then we're going to take a look at how many of them are there in the contest. And then we're going to quickly go over champion by champion and go over how important it is to have SIG 200 on their abilities and how big of a hindrance it could potentially be if you don't have them at SIG 200. And to answer the second point, it's actually very quick. According to my count, currently there are actually only 10 champions that I would define as SIG 200 champions. And then obviously there are a ton of champions that require high SIG champions. But we're going to be jumping to Auntmay, and Auntmay is a wonderful, wonderful website where we can go over every champion, we can split them, we can filter them, we can do a ton of things. Right, we're going to start off with a champion that used to be SIG 200 champion, or more specifically SIG 99 champion, because by the time she got nerfed, there was no 5-star version of her, and that is Black Widow. OG Black Widow used to be a definition of SIG 200 champion, and that's because her ability accuracy reduction scaled up to 100%. Now, she got nerfed at 12.0 and then slightly rebuffed, but still. She is the OG definition of SIG 200 champion because it's very easy to explain why SIG 200 is so important. If you're using Black Widow against an away champion, for instance, who doesn't have his ability accuracy artificially inflated, at SIG 200 she was able to guarantee that opponent will not evade, therefore you could ignore the fact that opponent can evade altogether. Right, which you guys kind of like understand where the definition now stems for. Because when you were using Black Widow, you could just forget about opponents evade. It just was never, ever, ever, ever gonna happen. And obviously no other abilities that Black Widow works against. Like Limbo against magic, or I don't know, damage from Electro, or whatever. But after the nerf, obviously, she doesn't scale up to SIG 100% anymore, therefore she got relegated from a SIG 200 champion to a champion that does require high signature ability to work well, but it ultimately doesn't matter much if you have 75% chance or 80% chance to stop the effects. If they're gonna trigger still. Not as frequently as they would against a normal champion, but Black Widow lost about 99% of her usefulness right there and then, because she couldn't guarantee the fact that she's going to prevent effects from activating, and she went from being one of the best champions in the game to being pretty much hot garbage in most of the cases. But okay, hot garbage is a bit hard, but she went to mid-tier champion. That's nothing special, and that is how important 100% can be in this game. Right, and now we're going to go in alphabetical order through all 10 champions that I have identified as SIG 200 champions. And we're going to start off with Captain America. I'm sure everybody knew this one's coming, because every single one of his abilities here scale up to 100%. And it wouldn't be such a big deal, to be honest, but if it was not for this skill ability, where it goes with your chance to purify debuff. You see, when you have 40% chance to purify debuff, it's a neat, nice novelty ability that's surely going to help you now and then, but if you can't guarantee the fact that the debuff is going to be purified, you can't rely on it, therefore you can't use it as a, let's say, pseudo-immune champion, what have you. Therefore, Cap Infinity War only unlocks his full utility and full reliability when he goes up to SIG 200. Yeah, of course, he has plenty of other abilities, and therefore people are very happy when they get to use him as SIG 100, for instance, because you can still use the Cosmic ability to inflict armor breaks and petrifies and access a whole bunch of other abilities, but at SIG 200 you gain this whole new scope of him, and you can bring him in against Biohazard, you can bring him in against Freezer Burn, and in a plethora of different situations, because if you play well, you can guarantee, and here's the word again, guarantee, make sure that you never get a single debuff on you if you have a skilled champion on your team. Therefore, Captain America is also pretty much a poster child of a SIG 200 champion in this game. And besides Captain America, we're going to be going to Daredevil, Hell's Kitchen. And in Daredevil's case, to be honest, it's not as important, but it's still very, very relevant. Because again, while in this mode, attacks reduce the damage of the opponent's passive degeneration and direct damage effects by 50% up to 100%. And that 100% is exactly where you want to be. Of course, if you're going to take 90% less damage from opponent's effect, it's still going to work very well in a lot of occasions. But if you're going to be going up against a very, very strong degeneration effect, or a very, very strong damage back effect, like, I don't know, do not go gentle or some crap like that, the fact that they can still trigger and the fact that they will hurt is very important, because you can still take damage and you can't rely on it. Therefore, Daredevil Hell's Kitchen, for whatever quality of a champion you think of him is in fact reliant on SIG 200. Again, this is a champion that does have a ton of different abilities, therefore he's a champion that can be used with low SIG or unawakened because of all the other abilities. But in order to rely on this one specific ability, you do want and slash need that SIG 200. Moving on to the next one, Dr. Doom, and I bet people did not expect to see Dr. Doom here. Now, because Dr. Doom kind of fits in pretty much every category. He's amazing and duped because he's that good, even though you lose out of things. Anybody would rank up Dr. Doom. He's great at low SIG as well because he has a decent starting point and he still acquires the ability to gain that power gain buff, which is very relevant and important. So even SIG 1 Dr. Doom gains a huge benefit. And then obviously we have this inflict shock where the higher SIG the better. But in order to use Dr. Doom's cheese and make sure 100% that you will inflict shock whenever you nullify a buff, you have to have him at SIG 200. That is to do that cheese where you can do it against Rage. Whenever you knock down an opponent gains a Fury buff, and you basically can just keep spamming heavy attacks. Or you can do it against Resonate. Wherever opponent gets hit, they gain either physical resistance or energy resistance buff. So there is a new aspect to Dr. Doom that comes with SIG 200, and therefore he does fit in this champion category as well, based on my definition. Now, in Dr. Doom's case, do I think it is super important that he's SIG 200? No, because Dr. Doom is amazing for a million different reasons, and that SIG 200 reliable ability is just kind of like a cherry on top. It adds a new thing to him, but the only reason he is included in this list is because of the definition that I gave, that ability scales up to 100% and it becomes reliable. There we go. That's why Dr. Doom's here. Next up, Guillotine. Now, Guillotine is another champion that functions perfectly well, unduped, and her SIG ability really doesn't matter in many cases. But for many people, it's very, very comforting to know, even if you mess up, you will not get your combo taken away, because Guillotine relies on her combo meter so much. So for me, it's kind of like either you play Guillotine unawakened, or you go all the way in and get her up to SIG 200, because this entire SIG ability is useless if you can't rely on it. It will save you here and then, but it's very important that you have that peace of mind that you can rely on signature abilities saving your combo meter whenever you would mess up. Therefore, yes, Guillotine 2099 is a SIG 200 champion, because then you can reliably guarantee yourself keeping the combo, even if you get hit, even if you don't have those heavy attack combo meter shield thingies active. So by my definition, Guillotine 2099 is a SIG 200 champion. And then we have Medusa. And Medusa is quite similar case, where with her auto block, obviously the main thing about Medusa is to get access to those Fury buffs. And those you get access to even at SIG 1. So she unlocks very important part of her utility at SIG 1. However, if you want to rely on that auto block, and that is actually more important than people realize, because it's not used only when you make mistakes, it can also be used offensively. And there we go. Only at SIG 200, you can 100% guarantee the fact that you will block the second strike that opponent is striking at you, and you will trigger that Purify, and you will remove that stun debuff. And that is the key aspect why I think this ability is actually quite underrated, because you can utilize Medusa extremely well against encroaching stun nodes. For instance, the Alliance War node, where we have deal encroaching stun and stupefy, and you were gonna be stunned for like eternity if you do not hit it on the right time against encroaching stun. Well, with Medusa, you can get stunned so long as you have the 3 Furies active, and if opponent tries to strike at you, then you're going to purify that stun and they're going to get stunned instead, and you can just combo them in Oblivion. Obviously there are other counters and other options, but this is just one example where SIG 200 can guarantee you a new sort of use or relevance for the ability. Next up, very quickly, Neymar. I don't think I have to explain it too much. Basically, 100% of Neymar's utility lies in his awakened ability, and he reflects damage that he takes while he's striking the opponent, and goes from 25% to 100%. If you reflect 25% of your damage, you're still probably going to be dead if the damage is big enough, or at the very least, you're going to be taking a lot of damage. If you reflect 100% of the damage you are getting while striking Electro or something, or Killmonger, well, then that's a different case. You take no damage and opponent takes all the damage. So Neymar is definitely, again, one of the poster childs of SIG 200 reliance, in my personal opinion, and reliance on signature ability altogether. Then we have Red Guardian. Red Guardian, again, has an ability that scales up to 100. Now, well, basically, it's kind of like two abilities that scale up to 100. Because maximum durability is increased for each 40 SIG levels, and you do want to get as many of those as possible, so you can have more durability charges and they function better for the rest of the abilities. But the most critical thing here is because well-timed blocks prevent you from losing your durability. Therefore, it's much easier to build them up, and you know for a fact that you will not risk fracturing your shield, and you will not have any problems building up your shield or maintaining its charges. Therefore, Red Guardian, again, is in fact very reliant on SIG 200 in my opinion. And yeah, that was the first thing that I did with the character as soon as I awakened. As soon as I got him, immediately took him to SIG 200, because that was the only way how I was able to play him well. Because previously, even if you parry the opponent, there is still a significant chance of you losing a durability charge, which can mess up with your strategies. The fact that you can guarantee that well-timed blocks will not make you lose these durability charges is very important for the character's mechanics. Moving up to the next one, and next one is Thing, and I know you guys are going to be talking about, what do you mean, he doesn't scale up to 100% here? You said definition is 100%. Well, it actually does, because it's 80% at its max SIG ability, plus 1% for each rock stack. That means if you include the 20 possible rock stacks, it does scale up to 100%, therefore Thing does fit in here. And yeah, Thing obviously is a great example of a high SIG champion, because whenever you want to have your protection reduce as much damage as possible, and you want to trigger it as often as possible, and you want to make sure you won't die even with protection on. And only way you can make sure of that is when you have 20 rock stack charges and a max SIG Thing. If you are gonna take even 1% damage, that can entirely shut down possible fights for you. And good examples there are when you're going up against some aggression fury nodes, or in alliance war against combo strike counter fury node, I believe it's called, where basically opponents can gain a ton of furies and hit insanely hard. But with Thing, if you have max SIG and if you're at 20 rock stacks throughout the entire fight, even if they were to hit you for 1 million health points, it gets reduced to nothing. If you're not at max SIG, if they were to hit you for 1 million health points, and if it gets reduced by, let's say, 90%, you're going to take 100,000 hit in the face, and it's still going to kill you. So Thing definitely relies on SIG 200, or at the very least unlocks new level of reliability of it. And here is going to be a very quick and straightforward for Vision Arcus. His ability to shrug off non-damaging debuffs from 30% to 100%, and again, that's extremely important in plenty of situations where you potentially would need to shrug off stun, or you potentially would need to shrug off, I don't know, heal block, or whatever else that could wreck you in that fight outside of damaging debuffs. So Vision Arcus is again one of those champions where he's perfectly good unawakened, lots to offer. Signature ability isn't absolutely mandatory, but if you do want to have most of Vision, you want to get him to SIG 200. And lastly, the final one is Yellowjacket, and that's the latest addition with the latest buff, and that is quite simply because this. And it's not scaling up to 100, it's scaling down to 0 this time, because Power Sting has a 100% chance to reapply itself once activated. Chance decreases by 45 to 0% each time it happens. And let's say you have SIG 100 thing, SIG 100 Yellowjacket. At that point, every time you trigger the Power Sting, you still have a chance it will not apply, and every time it carries on further and further, you have more and more of a chance that it won't reapply itself. However, once you reach 0, once you reach that, even if you're at SIG 199, and if they have like 1% chance that the Power Sting will not reapply itself, you no longer find that 1% adds up. It's 1% for each time, so opponent activates 10 special attacks. Assuming they're still alive, you only have 90% chance to reapply the Power Sting, and there's 10% chance it will disappear. But with 0%, obviously you eliminate that altogether, and once you have activated that special 3, you know the Power Sting will remain on the opponent for the rest of the duration of the fight, should you win or lose. Therefore, Yellowjacket is another SIG 200 champion. But that is it. So currently, according to my count, we have 10 SIG 200 champions in this game. And obviously there are a ton more champions which most people would immediately identify as SIG 200 champions. But honestly, if there is not a distinguishable difference in between SIG 190 to SIG 200, I will not count them as SIG 200 champions, because that's a champion that just wants as high SIG as possible. Right. This video took a while, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button, hit all the buttons, and I will catch you guys soon. See ya! Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel.